Good morning. It is Monday morning. It is 11:03. It is July 11th, and I'm not actually sure how it got to be July 11th already. There we are. I've caught up and my video is caught up. Hopefully it's all in sync now. But how in the hell is it already July 11th? Like I know that time is speeded up and there's, time is a contract, whatever, but like it feels like things have like really sped up. Like it feels like I keep blinking and then there's another whole month that's gone by. Like shit, we're in the middle of July already. I feel like it doesn't I don't know. It just feels like extra speeded up. Extra sped up. Let me use proper English. How are you? How was your weekend? It is gorgeous here in Massachusetts. I know global warming and it's not a good thing and all these things. I really I get it, and I feel like there's so much that's the planet is kind of on fire literally, but like I also am enjoying this summer this year that's like pretty mild and it hasn't been too humid, and I haven't even I don't even have my air conditioners in my windows. There's been a couple of times where I was miserable about that, and I was hot. But it's not been the norm. And normally by this point, I'm basically living in the air conditioning. So I'm kind of grateful for the reprieve, even though it sort of makes me go, what's coming? Because it's just not the way it used to be for sure. So, good morning, good morning. I hope wherever you are, it is bright and sunny and beautiful. And what can we be grateful for today? I, what the title I talked, the title of the live today is Perspective, Generations, and I don't know what the third thing was. It doesn't matter. Um, but I wanted to bring shifting generations and shifting, and I said that specifically because I was in a I on Monday mornings, one of my friends, Jamie Chapman, who, if you don't know Jamie Chapman, introduce yourselves to her because she's brilliant. Jamie Chapman has a group on Monday mornings. It's called Curated Conversations. It used to be Coffee Conversations, but Coffee Connect or something. It's essentially a networking group, but it's also just like a group of women coming together to share perspective, to share curated conversations. And she always gives us a topic, and that topic sort of wends its way around all these different places. And it's fascinating, like the conversations we have in those mornings. I mean, I am not a morning person, and it is rare that I'm up and presentable at 8 o'clock in the morning to be on camera, especially nowadays that I work for myself. I mean, I don't even schedule my first client until 9:30 sometimes. But it's worth getting up for, so I make it a point because it's important to me. And this morning was not was even more so than usual. We had such a deep conversation about perspective. It was really very cool. And everybody was talking about, there were some people who were talking about having difficult conversations with families, with their with like real with siblings or parents or whatever, and how they just are so against everything that these people are for, and it was really painful, and that some people make the decision not to have those people in their lives anymore. So we had this whole conversation about when is having a really difficult conversation like, when do we do that in from a place of, let's say, advocacy, or when do we just put a boundary up and say, you know what, this is toxic and unhealthy for me? So it was a really cool conversation. One of the things that came up was a woman who was really pretty adamant about the fact that she has these boundaries, and there are people that are in her world that are just so conservative in their views and thinking that she doesn't want anything to do with them, and it's safer and healthier and better for everybody if she doesn't. And there was an intensity to what she was talking about. Um, and then I jumped in and said, well, I have had a couple of times I've had clients who believe things so differently than I do about a number of different subjects. And I often find that when I can do my own work around what am I triggered by in this person, when I can figure out what is it in me what is she picking what shadow is she bringing out in me, that I can hold space and have really really cool conversations with people who I wouldn't necessarily get to share views on. And I like to think that we both change each other's perspective. We both give each other a different way of looking at things, a different viewpoint that wouldn't necessarily have been possible if I hadn't allowed the conversation in the first place. In fact, I had one woman in a class of mine once say to me, she thanked me for allowing her to talk so freely about this particular politician whom I happen to have, I mean, I really enjoyed this politician, right? And I mean, as much as you can like any of them, but so she thanked me for allowing her to just like speak her mind on the subject, and we got to a really powerful healing place where this student was able to own her own shadow and why she hated this person so much. And again, it was someone that I had endorsed as a candidate. So it was, I had to get myself out of the way enough to be empathy have empathy for her position. And it resulted in this really cool healing for both of us. It absolutely gave me a way more understanding of some maybe radical, extreme viewpoints. And we came at the conversation with mutual respect and compassion for one another. So it was delightful. So I brought that up. I brought that up in the group today. And you know, I said it really provided some wonderful healing for the both of us. And then you know, the conversation continued, and then this woman again spoke up and she was like, but this conversation about, you know, seeing the other side and having both and viewpoints and allowing that there's good on both sides is she was talking about marginalized people, and that how we were having a privileged conversation. I mean, yes, it's a group of white women, so we cannot speak to anybody with people of color, indigenous people. That's 100% true. But there were some people who, I mean, I'm a lesbian, I'm a hippie lesbian pagan, right? So I have some margin. I'm a woman. It was all women, so we understand that point of view. I'm a lesbian, so I'm already marginalized. There's many people who are Jewish who are also people who get, you know, marginalized. There was a whole bunch of different people from all different walks of life. And so I said to her, I said to this woman, I said, there's still a humanity. I said, I practice every day. I have a prayer practice. It's the method I do every day. I connect with all of humanity. I connect with everybody on the planet. Um, and I make it a point in that prayer, in that meditation, to connect with people who drive me crazy, who I think are actively, I don't want to say trying to hurt me, but making policies or changes or hurting the planet. I make it a point to try to connect at the most basic level with even those people. And you know, I shared with her, I said, listen, I am a marginalized group. I am a lesbian in society. I am a pagan in a society that has never valued it. I said, so I get being marginalized. And it got, this conversation got actually a little heated. This woman was really wedded to her viewpoint that we were having this privileged conversation in a vacuum, and it didn't necessarily take into consideration the perspectives of she said, what about a black disabled woman? And I was like, okay, you're right, I can't possibly understand where she's coming from, but I don't think having an us and them perspective has helped us at all. And that was kind of the question I wanted to pose to you guys, is at what point do we have a sort of a moral obligation to have some difficult conversations? And at what and how do we check our own privilege? And also, how do we invite in dialogue? Right? I said, we can't have empathy for someone else if we don't have compassion for ourselves. That's just true. It's just impossible. If you're constantly telling yourself what you did wrong, then there's no way you can have empathy for someone else. You're going to have to, there has to be an us and an them. There has to be a divided thing. A few years ago, there was a commercial. I can't remember which, it was a beer company that did it. And they did it in another country. But they had all of these people who were like really opposing viewpoints on these great giant political things come together over a beer. And like they paired up a homophobe with a trans woman who was transgender, or like there was so many. They just took like really um disparaging viewpoints, and they had them sit down and find their commonalities. They had them sit and have a conversation. And at one point, people were ready to walk out of the conversation. I didn't sign up for this, but they had agreed to do this thing. It was a social experiment, and they agreed to do it. And so they all got to get at the end. There was like laughter and tears and shared experiences. It was beautiful. I'll find it. I'll post it for you guys and find it. But that's sort of what I was coming at today is when we see things as black and white, when we see things as us and them, when we see things as like a right and wrong. Like if you're coming at a conversation with someone from a place of, let's say, moral superiority, that doesn't open anything up for dialogue. That doesn't give any room for there to be any other possibilities. So can we today just try to see if we can come at things with an open mind? That and I'm not condoning, I'm not saying that the things that people do to other people or groups of people, or the that the laws that are passing right now, or the political environment anywhere in the world, or that Putin should be allowed to invade Ukraine without any kind of consequences to that. None of that is true. But what I'm saying is that we might have to work really fucking hard to find the humanity in someone like Putin. And but that's our job. That's our job. And if we can get to that place, and I'm not saying it's easy, trust me, this is the thing I work on. Like I said, I do it every day. But we're all souls. We're all one consciousness. So some point, somewhere along the way, something happened to him, or he came here to be so exquisitely unconscious that the rest of the world wakes up because of him. But I mean, he's a human, he's a being, he's a soul, he's part of our consciousness. And so if we can't em- embrace his humanity, absolutely not his behavior or his actions, but if we can embrace his humanity, then we are healing the planet and being the change we want to see in the world. I'm going to butcher it, but Martin Luther King said, "Hate, hate cannot drive out, hate cannot whatever something light darkness cannot drive out the darkness. Only love can do that," or something along those lines. And I don't mean to in any way um, take cultural. I'm not doing any kind of appropriation. I am just sort of trying to pass along a point. And again, I get to sit here from an able-bodied white perspective. Okay, that's true. But I also get to sit here from a marginalized lesbian, pagan, hippie perspective, woman. perspective as well. So I would just invite you all to today, what what can you embrace? What conversations can you have that maybe are difficult? Can you stand up for the can you be an advocate, an ally for marginalized groups? Can you speak into the spaces to offer a different perspective, but to do so not to prove them wrong and you right, but to do so to open up a dialogue, to have an entry point, a 1 degree shift? Because I feel like if we were able to get to 1 degree shifts, that we would find that there's more alike in us than differences. Just like the woman who was in my class. When it came down to it, she kept saying, "I'm terrified they're not going to let me practice my religion." And I said, "That's exactly how we feel." And so it was like we both came at the same problem from a totally different perspective. And that was really powerful for me. And for her, she said so. She said, "Thank you for letting me have this conversation in such an open, honest way." And it was because I could meet her. I could open myself. I could recognize my shit. And we had a conversation about it. One of the things I love about the younger generations is they do this inherently. Like Lily's generation, like the Gen Zs, man, they came in upgraded. They already freaking get it. We're just here to, as space holders for them. They're the ones that are actually going to be able to be actually are the change. Like Lily doesn't get it when we talk about people getting discriminated against, or that people see color as a reason for someone being less than or whatever. She's like, I don't get it. Like, it literally doesn't compute in her brain. In her world, we're all going to be like shade. She loves that everybody's different colors and shades and nationalities, and like her generation of kids, they have they're fluid in all ways. Like, sometimes they're gender fluid, sometimes they're sexually fluid, sometimes they're spiritually fluid, or like it it doesn't matter. Color, not that they don't see color, but like it doesn't matter. Like it's heartwarming. It reminds me that that generation is the one that came in. There's a brilliant book. There's a amazing book by Dolores Cannon, who wrote, I think she wrote this book in the 80s, maybe. It was a long fucking time ago. There was a book by Dolores Cannon called something like A New Earth, or it's something like The New Earth. It's not, because that's Eckhart Tolle's book, but something along those lines. I'll post that too. But it's talking about the three waves of light workers that came flooded the planet in 1945, when we created the ability to blow ourselves up, literally. Light workers, intergalactic light workers from all over the galaxies, the universe, flooded the planet, and they were coming in waves. There was three waves. So the boomers, the generation that was immediately right behind the atomic bombs, they came in to like fight against the status quo, but not really. They were never really going to get to succeed in it. They were just going to fight against the status quo. That was so much of what the 60s was about, was a rejection of everything, like a rejection of everything, like the establishment. And that was their job. And then our job, our generation, as Generation X, was space holders. That's why we're so good at it. That's why we're so we have that's why it's sort of why things happen, that we ended up being the latchkey generation, and we ended up having to fend for ourselves, and we ended up having to like completely amuse ourselves, because we are the space holders. And then the millennials the millennials and the Gen Zs. The millennials are the ones who are actually changing things. They're the ones who get to succeed at the change. And Lily's generation is already upgraded. I was having a conversation with a client the other day. I was talking about sometimes Lily gets anxious, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That makes me so sad." And I was like, "No, no, don't feel that way, because she deals with anxiety now when we have the tools and resources, and she has the support. She's not going to be 40 or 50 or wake up with crippling anxiety and not know how to deal with it." I said, She's just having her initiation early. And that's the whole Gen Z. They're having their initiation early. They're growing up in a pandemic. They're having school disrupted. They're having their initiations early when they still have the support of parents who are doing work and try and recognizing that it's our job to safeguard children and have conversations and teach them and show them and help them grow. And that's their job. Our job is to be the safe space for that. They're going to change. They're the ones that are going to fix it. So we just got to get ourselves out of the way. Anyway, I've rambled on a lot today. I hope I've given you some thoughts to think about. I would love to have these conversations at length with any one of you if you are interested. Let's talk, let's share, let's share, let's chat. Drop in the comments what if this brought up anything for you, or if you're questioning something. Let's have dialogue. Let's have some real conversation around this. Let's see if we can shift some perspectives. And I have a archetype class next week. Please come to the archetype class. It's the archetypes are the roadmap home to yourself. Like I have a one of my primary archetypes is Kermit the Hulk. I say that and you can completely see that, right? Yes. So I got to embrace that in me for the first time ever by understanding my archetypes. And I would love to give that gift to everybody. So please come to the archetype class on the 21st. And then right on the heels of it is this chakra class on the 27th. And both of these classes will give you a very real world practical understanding of who you are and what makes you tick so that you can have these perspective shifts, so that we can do the healing, so that you aren't crippled with anxiety. Both of those classes, and they're like one right after the other on purpose. They each are going to build on each other. These are really foundational classes that I feel like everybody needs the information on. Good morning, Tammy. Thank you. Yes, right. Understanding archetypes is it's like a whole new perspective on who you are. Yes, thank you for saying that. It's so awesome. So join me next Thursday for the archetypes, and the Wednesday the 27th for chakras, and I promise you that is your roadmap home. Because right now the world is getting more and more uncomfortable expressly so that we have a moral obligation to start doing our internal work, and it's only going to get worse until we come into our own selves. I love you. I love you. I love you. Have a wonderful day.